Great, thanks Lucy. So hi everyone, I'm Laura Bambini from the RSPB and I'm here today to talk about biosecurity. But I thought to start this off, we'd like to show you this video which introduces the subject. This was made a couple of years ago in the Chance, which is one of our internationally important seabird islands, and it gives, I think, a good flavour of the work that we do, biosecurity on islands and the seabirds, which are the reason that we do it for. So, to you, Lucy.
Okay, let's give this a go.
There is lots special about the Chant Isles, depending on what your interest is. For us, it is the seabird. So there's, well, nationally and internationally important numbers of things like puffins and razorbills. There's also good numbers of fulmar and kittiwake and guillemot. Yeah, it's all here and just all crammed together in really dense areas. It's quite a spectacle. Sometimes a year there's up to 250,000 birds here, all in this small area, and they're all here, all living their lives, all going out to find food and coming here to nest. And yeah, it's just noisy, it's just smelly, it's the best smell in the world, and it's utter seabird mayhem, which is just fantastic for people like us who get high off the smell of seabird. There used to be invasive black rats on the Chants, and a group of 12 or so people spent the winter out here of 2015-2016 and successfully removed all of them. And we're proud of this because black rats are invasive species and they were predating on the seabirds. So seabirds face lots of hazards and pressures in their lives, and by removing a predator that shouldn't have been here has just relieved one of those pressures, and that's an amazing thing to be able to say that we've achieved here. Taking that pressure off all of these species in at least one place that's really important for them. And I was surprised. There was a lot of water, but I was surprised there wasn't more. Yeah.
There's always that risk that rats could return somehow accidentally, just on a vessel that's travelling here with visitors, or bringing sheep ashore, the graziers, that kind of thing. There's always a risk that rats could return, or a shipwreck is, a really high risk situation.
There's all biosecurity aware already. Yeah, well, you know what?
But we'll all just head down to the wreck site and then work back. In early November, a fish farm landing craft ran aground at the southern end of House Island here, and that brings with it the risk that there were rats on board that could have then got to the Chants, reached the Chants and started colonising the Chants.
So this is the site of the wreck here. So the wreck was actually, when we arrived on the island here, then the landing craft was submerged with just the top of it visible on a low tide, just above the water. And it was just basically between the southern end of House Island and that wee skerry off there.
So basically, we put in place an incursion response, basically putting out a whole lot of monitoring equipment, so camera traps and bait and traps to basically detect and trap any rats that potentially could have come ashore with that fish farm boat.
Bit of a operation. They never do them big enough sizes by hand. This is a rodenticide block, and what we're doing now is we're just doing this final check, and I'm going through the rodenticide block and I'm looking for teeth marks. If any teeth mark was left, that would be a sign that there's potentially still rodents here, which would obviously be bad news. I'm pleased to say that this block is in really good condition and there are no signs of rodent teeth marks, so we're all happy about that. Very happy indeed. I'm just pre-drilling some wax surveillance blocks. So these is just candle wax that we melt down and flavour. These ones are flavoured with chocolate, and they can be left out in the environment as non-toxic, and if there were any rats that got back to the islands, hopefully they'd come and gnaw, and then we would, we go back around and we check them out and we look for teeth marks. All the ones along the shore. Actually, this is probably the best office in the world. Welcome to the office.
Exactly what we're looking for and the best outcome. We've done an intensive sort of incursion response. Had no sign of rats. Checked all our biosecurity stations across the whole island. For a lot of us who are concerned about what's happening in the environment, the decline in biodiversity, climate change, sometimes you can feel helpless. This is something tangible. We can remove invasive species where they're present. So it's this tangible thing that we can do that we know that will help at a time when there's so many other pressures, which are difficult, which require this sort of huge combined global effort to tackle. And that can often be just difficult to navigate. But this is tangible.
A lot of conservation is about the real long-term impact, and this is about the long-term impact, the long-term safety of seabirds, hopefully to see increase in population and breeding success and all of that. But the actual thing you're doing, you actually see success quite quickly, and yeah, that's motivation. That's all the motivation you need.
That's great, thank you. So I will hopefully share my presentation. So that was just a brief introduction to the kind of work that we do on seabird islands to protect them with biosecurity. So now I'm going to talk to you about Biosecurity for Life, which is a 5-year project just coming to an end this summer, and that's been all about seabirds and biosecurity. So it's a real pleasure for me to be here today to tell you about this great project on behalf of the partnership. I'm going to introduce the project and then show you some of the stuff we've done and tell you a little bit about what is going to happen next now that the project is ending. So first of all, seabirds. Why are we doing this work? It's all about seabirds, and the UK is incredibly important for seabirds. We have globally important populations of many species, and like we heard on the video there, these species face multitude of pressures out at sea and on land. On land, the main threat they face is invasive non-native mammalian predators. But the UK is home to an incredible 80% of global manx shearwater populations. We've got about 60% of global northern gannets, great skuas, and about 10% of the global population of puffins. So we're really important for seabirds. And our most important colonies are found on islands that are free of non-native mammalian predators, and these have been recognised as special protection areas. They have just incredible numbers of seabirds. And through Biosecurity for Life, we worked on 42 of these SPAs, which together are home to more than 3 million seabirds. And these islands are absolute seabird havens, and their survival depends on them remaining predator-free. And we can do this with biosecurity. And at the start of this project, only 2 of these islands were fully protected by biosecurity. So that was the starting place. And the objective of this project was to change that and to safeguard our seabirds for life. So this has been a big partnership led by the RSPB, working with National Trust and National Trust for Scotland, our partners. The project's been funded by EU Life with contributions from all the agencies here, and all of these organisations have been involved in this project throughout, and we've had a really an incredible partnership. So to begin with, one of the best and most important things we needed to do was to raise awareness of this threat. It's not generally well known that rats and stoats and things like that pose a threat to seabirds. So we wanted to raise awareness about this and also what we can do to help, because us humans have a really important role in keeping our islands free of seabird predators, because we are the unwitting transporters of these animals. They can stay away on vessels, in aircraft, in cargo, and these are called pathways. This is how invasive species move around, and this is how rats and stoats and other seabird predators get to seabird islands. And it's incredible the stories we hear. You wouldn't think how successful these animals are at getting around. But there's a simple solution to this: check before you go. And that's really the key message from this project. We need to carry out these checks on our pathways to make sure that we don't move things around. That's the most important thing we need to do. Sounds really simple, but it takes a bit of getting used to biosecurity. So we started off by talking to people about biosecurity, and we talked to a lot of people. Over the 5-year project, we've reached out to over 30 million people through articles and being on radio and TV, but we've also importantly reached out to communities living on islands, organisations managing islands, so site managers, wardens, and a whole variety of people. There's a lot of stakeholders in island biosecurity. Basically, anyone who lives on an island or visits an island or works on or around an island is a stakeholder and has a role to play in island biosecurity. So we did all this awareness raising work. We talked to people, we went to events, we hosted and organised events. We also developed tools and guidance and protocols to help with biosecurity. But very importantly to us, we wanted to reach out to the next generation. So we wanted to work with school kids, and we co-designed some incredible educational materials with them. And I'd like to just show you one of those. I can't have to stop. Screen. Sorry.
Has that switched over to my screen now, Laura?
Yeah, I can see the video. Yeah.
Welcome to News Square. I'm Christopher Siegel, and I'll be reporting all the top breaking news as it happens. Breaking news just in. There has been a major biosecurity breach on the Craigleith Island of North Berwick. Sad puffins have reported missing cases of eggs. Katie Curlew is on the scene as we speak.
I'm here reporting live from the Puffin Police press conference to find out more about what's going on Craigleith Island. I'm joined by two members of the Puffin Police Force, PC Puff and PC Finn. Now, constables, can you tell us exactly what is happening on Craigleith Island?
We have lots of rat holiday makers visiting our island and like eating all the puffin eggs, resulting to so many puffin parents losing their children. The holiday makers have been stowing away in parcels and bags, and even pockets of other visitors to get to this exclusive island.
We will be calling all actions and will be working with the rat holiday makers and all our visitors to the islands and to stamp all this out immediately.
I'm here in North Berwick Harbour with prime suspect Rata Booty. Now Rata, why have you been holidaying on Puffin Island eating all of the puffin eggs?
Well, obviously, like everyone else, I worked really hard every day. I was in great need of all sorts of holiday. I thought Puffin Island would be the perfect place.
I'm Ollie Osprey and back to the studio.
What? Oh.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lizzie. I absolutely love that video. We have so many of these. Obviously can't show them all. Is my presentation back?
Yes.
Yep, great. So moving on. So after we'd No, it's not moving on. Moving on. So we talked to lots of people and people really got it. This message seemed to really resonate. As soon as people heard about biosecurity, they were on board. Almost everyone we reached out to got involved and started doing biosecurity with us. And we started with biosecurity planning. So we worked with site managers and wardens and island communities to develop biosecurity plans for the islands that they lived on or worked on. And the biosecurity plan basically details all the measures that are in place to protect our island from incursions. An incursion is where a new animal arrives on an island for the first time. It's not yet an invasion at that stage, but that's when you need to act to stop it becoming a full-blown invasion and an established population. So we worked to develop plans for all the 42 seabird island SPAs. And once we had the plans, we then worked with people to put in place surveillance measures on these islands. So those wax blocks we saw in the first video, and trail cameras and other tools to ensure that if anything did get to the island, we would detect it quickly or early. That's early detection. And we put in place barriers on those pathways that we talked about as well. We also needed to be ready to respond in case something did get through our prevention measures and got picked up by our surveillance tools on the islands. So we set up rapid incursion response hubs in strategic locations around the UK. And these are just storage spaces that have all the traps and monitoring tools and rodenticide and anything else we might need in the event of an incursion to be able to respond to it, to make sure that all the kit was there and ready, because when there is an incursion, it's critically important to get there very quickly to nip it in the bud before the animals have a chance to move around and perhaps start breeding. And to support these incursion responses and help maintain those hubs, we're recruiting volunteers and training them up to carry out these incursion responses. And this is absolutely a critical part of island biosecurity. You need both the early detection and the preventative measures, but you also need to have the ability to respond rapidly in the event that something happens. And as a result of this work, over the last 5 years, we have now managed to put in place comprehensive biosecurity measures on 95% of those 42 seabird island SPAs, and that is just an incredible result. Our seabirds are now better protected on these islands, and we can be confident that they can continue breeding on them for years to come. But it doesn't end there, because we wanted to make sure that these islands had biosecurity for life. So we spent a lot of time right from the beginning of the project developing what was going to come after the project ended. We asked for views with all those people we worked with. We asked them what they needed, what support that they needed going forward to make sure that biosecurity would continue. And we had some really good feedback, and we've based our legacy plans around that feedback, and we've managed to secure funding to continue biosecurity in England, Wales and Scotland. Biosecurity will also continue in Northern Ireland, but the situation and the sites there are a bit different, so we don't have a new project starting there. But in England, Scotland and Wales, we are just now in the transition phase. The Biosecurity for Life is ending and we're starting up projects. And the aim of these projects, the key aim of these is to set up sustainable long-term partnerships that will run and manage biosecurity programs in each UK country. And through this work, we'll ensure that the rapid incursion response hubs and the volunteer program will continue to operate across GB. And we will continue to grow our capacity with conservation and detection dog teams, which we've also trained throughout this project. I'm sorry I didn't talk about that, but you can find out about our dog work on our website and on our Twitter accounts. But this has proved to be a really important part of biosecurity and what we do. So we want to continue to grow our capacity in this, and we can use these dogs to help with surveillance checks and also check cargo and vessels, and help with incursion responses to make sure that those are effective. And we'll continue to have biosecurity officers around the country to provide advice and support and coordinate biosecurity data collection. It's really important that we collect the data from all the surveillance that we do, and particularly any incursions that happen, so that we can learn and develop and get better at doing biosecurity. So thanks for listening. To find out more, please visit our website, and you can follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at Biosecurity Live. We'll have questions at the end. I'll hand over now to Lucy.
Thank you, Laura. That was great. Sue, are you ready to go?
I am, yes. Yep, I'm ready.
That looks good.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Right, here I go. So I'm Sue, and I'm the ranger for the National Trust for Scotland for St Kilda. Very nice to be included in this seminar. Thank you for inviting me. And I'm going to talk really about what we've been doing upon the islands here. St Kilda is one of the most important sites for breeding seabirds in the North Atlantic. We've got the largest seabird colony in Europe. So we have 74% of the UK's leeches, storm petrels. We've got the largest colony of puffins and northern fulmars. And we've got the second largest gannetry in the world. Rats are therefore definitely not welcome here. We want to prevent a rat incursion. We've been very fortunate that we've never had rats on St Kilda. We've remained rat-free despite our neighbours having problems and going through similarly to the Shants or Canna. We've noted significant seabird declines over the last 20 years here, as with everywhere else. Our comparative data from 2015 to 2020 has shown a decrease in northern fulmars, Manx shearwaters, leeches storm petrels, European storm petrels, European shag, great skewers, lesser and greater blackback gulls, herring gulls, common cormorants and Atlantic puffins. And additionally, we've had the significant toll of avian flu last year. 2021 and 2022 had a devastating impact on our great skewer population, and we actually lost 2/3 of our birds last year. So we've got unknown damage that's been caused to our colonies, such as northern gannets and Atlantic puffins, which did test positive last year. St Kilda is no stranger to biosecurity, and as long ago as 25 to 30 years ago, the wardens who worked here were busy monitoring visiting vessels because they understood the impact that rats would have if they were to get ashore. So for those of you who don't know St Kilda, we're situated 100 miles off the northwest coast of Scotland. We're 40 miles off the Outer Hebrides, and we consist of 4 islands and 3 stacks. So we're an area that's steeped in wildlife and history. It's a mixed UNESCO World Heritage Site, and we have that for our culture and our wildlife, and it's the only one of this mixed status in the UK. So it's owned and managed by the National Trust for Scotland, and these are the 3 of us who are the current rangers on the island. So there's Craig, who's the seabird and marine ranger, Claire, who's our archaeologist, and myself is the ranger. And we've been together, this is our 3rd season now, so we're quite a team. It's quite nice to be same people sort of consistently year on year. Hopefully we've got it right this year. So our 4 main islands are as follows. This is Herta, And this is our main island where all visitors come. This is where all the NTS and the Ministry of Defence buildings are sited. We've got St Kilda mice here, and we also have Soay sheep. So there are other 2 mammals apart from ourselves. This is the island of Doon, which is situated really close to Herta. You can see it's just a small gap between Doon and Herta there at the middle of the picture. It's got very few people who visit here. We really limit it because it's such an important seabird breeding site. So we limit it to puffin monitoring, which is probably 2 to 3 trips a year. And then occasionally we get climbers at the very end of the season. We have no sheep on Herta, and we do have St Kilda mice. This is Borray and Stack and Armin and Stack Lee. Landings here are very difficult from the sea, and we have Borray black-faced sheep that live on these islands, well, on the main island. We don't know whether we have St Kilda mice. And this is Soay, which is very rarely landed on. It's very difficult to get onto Soay, and you need rope access. Here we have the Soay sheep, and we again don't know whether there are St Kilda mice present here. So going back to Herta, this is a working island. We have a symbiotic relationship, I like to call it, between Kinetic and ourselves. Kinetic are the private company who run the radar base for the Ministry of Defence, and their buildings are on the bottom right corner of the picture. Our buildings are the white manse in the middle of the picture at the bottom there. The MOD have leased the land from National Trust for Scotland since the 1950s. And we've got a very good working relationship. From 2018 to 2021, they demolished the original buildings that they put up, and the island massively benefited by having a rat incursion policy written between the National Trust for Scotland and Kinetic. So they employed a full-time ecologist who was setting up and executing safe practice around the landing craft, which brought all the building materials onto the island for the new build and took all the old buildings off. All visitors who come to Herta mainly land on the jetty, and this includes visitors coming via cruise ship, via charter boats, via private yachts, and via day boats. Even the paddle boarders and the kayakers as well. We do get some brave souls who come across the sea in this mode of transport. From the last 2 annual reports, the majority of the calls that are made by the day boats, and each day boat carries 12 passengers. So these are the most frequent visitors. And then following the easing of COVID restrictions in 2021, there was a surge in private yachts. So in 2021, we had masses more than we'd ever had before. And I think this was because people couldn't actually travel further afield. So they were visiting the islands close to home. By 2022, this had changed, so presumably the private yachts were able to go further, and we had the majority of our passengers came via cruise ships. Last year, we had our highest ever visitor numbers, so we had 6,278 visitors. So this is the highest since we've been recording our numbers. We've always insisted that passengers arrive by open tender, so that's whether they come by cruise ships, or day boats or private vessels, and even the colossal Soay sheep beer allowance has to come the same way, so it's carefully packed and slowly brought ashore in the same way. We have a total approach to biosecurity. So in 2021 we installed a Virkon foot mat on the jetty. The idea being that this would to prevent alien seeds or microorganisms being brought onto the island by footwear. But sadly, with avian flu, this is now dual purpose, so it's also acting as a means of preventing spread from our island to others of avian flu. So that's our first landing point, and that's where most people come in. The second landing point is the slipway, and this is where the landing craft comes now probably about 6 times a year, bringing large items. As you can see, it's bringing porta cabins in here. Between 2018 and 2021, the landing craft visited probably about twice weekly, so it posed a huge risk for rats to come ashore. So as I say, they were removing all the building materials that were being used on the new build. We still have visits by the ship, as I say, 6 times a year. Refuelling is one of them. This takes several hours and involves more than one trip to the island. So all this time, the bows of the boat are open and we're pumping fuel onto the island. The third landing point that we have on the island is the helipad, and helicopters visit twice weekly, bringing food and staff and supplies. And this is run through Kinetic. So again, Kinetic take responsibility for ensuring that anything that's brought over has been checked. Items are kept once they arrive in a sealed room. So they take responsibility quite seriously for that side of things. In 2021, in partnership with the Biosecurity for Life project, we specifically targeted giving biosecurity packs to private yachts. So part of my job is meeting all visitors, and I've probably given out about 40 packs over the last 2 years. And then in 2022, last year, Sarah Lawrence of the Biosecurity for Life project visited to help us really improve our surveillance on the island. She came over and memorably said, you need to learn to think like a rat, for choosing where we were going to put the wax bait stations. Our first additional task in 2022, so once all the building work was completed, was to take responsibility for rat watch. So as I said, this is times when they come to refuel the island or bring big items in. So with the end of the MOD rebuild, the ecologist was no longer employed. So NTS staff now site 8 live traps around our own mans, around the base and around the landing area. And we check them every 12 hours and they stay in situ for 3 consecutive days. And in addition, we provide rat watch of the actual gangplank. So we sit there, we take shifts of about an hour, hour and a quarter each. So the 3 NTS staff and a volunteer take it in shifts, and we're responsible for checking that part of the journey of things. Biosecurity's is looked after by Kinetic at Loch Carnan, which is the other end of the journey, and a board ship, and of course when the items come onto the island for unpacking. We then looked with Sarah at the different sites of wax bait stations around Herta, our main island. So we set up 31 stations in total. So 11 are around the village itself, around the bay where the most concentration is. And the rest of the stations we positioned everywhere that we felt was a likely place where rats might hide or shelter or feed. So we made flavoured wax bait, which was secured in the bait boxes and firmly attached to the ground because we have loads of wind here. But of course, it's not that simple. Here on St Kilda, we have the endemic St Kilda mice, and these are voracious rodents who love flavoured wax. And we've had to learn to identify their chew marks as opposed to rat chew marks. But they took to it so much that they were eating the bait so quickly in the village that we often had completely consumed the evidence before we could even check it. So this resulted in industrial scale wax bait station making. It was worrying us that the wax may have been harming the mice, and the project pointed out that it might be that we didn't even know whether the same mice were returning to feed or whether it was large numbers of different mice. So we're doing things differently this year. We're not putting as much out. We're working on a monthly basis for the village wax bait stations, and we're just monitoring this to see if this works better. In July of last year, the Biosecurity for Life team came back to us for 3 days, and they assisted us with siting wax bait stations on the other islands. So they were Doon, Soay and Borray, and also to talk through a rat incursion response. They fearlessly went to Borray, and they were sporting their hazmat suits because, of course, avian flu was raging at that time, and they managed to successfully site the bait stations there. And then the same for Soay, where rope access was required, and again they had success with the sighting, so that was fantastic. And then finally Doon, which is also quite tricky for landing, but again the intrepid team pulled it off. So finally, what happens following a rat incursion? The biosecurity plan has been written for Borray and Soay and for Doon and Herta. And this has been written between NTS and Biosecurity for Life. And this is a working document. So it gives us guidance and it gives us detailed preventative measures, because we're trying to get into a rat prevention culture, and making it everybody's responsibility to be aware of what their part to play is. As Laura's already said, an incursion must be responded to immediately, so with detailed information about what's been observed and immediate contact with the rat incursion response team. It would mean that we'd have to set up a whole array of bait stations baited with rodenticide across a grid, and we'd have to work very quickly, so they had to be up within 48 hours. We'd have to set up trail cameras and monitor closely for the next few days or weeks. Craig and I have both undergone Lantra rodenticide training. As I say, we keep revisiting what we're doing to make sure that it's current, relevant and actually workable, because obviously these things take a lot more of our time. So in conclusion, the scale and speed of the response, coupled with the inaccessibility of our islands and the generally rough terrain, makes the thought of an incursion response incredibly daunting. And this makes us even more determined to focus our attention on prevention and good communication with our partners, working together to make everybody really aware and prevent rats ever arriving on St Kilda. So that's it for me, but if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you both. That was fantastic. I'm sure everyone will agree that they were great presentations. I absolutely love the videos in yours, Laura. Really good. I have seen a few questions coming in the chat already. Let's have a look. So the first is, how do we prioritise which islands should be revisited and checked, and in what order, and also what resources are required?
I think that's probably for me. Well, we should visit all of the islands, because all the islands where we do biosecurity are very important and regular checks are important. Some of our islands, particularly the ones in Scotland and sort of North Atlantic, are quite tricky to access. So for those, checks are very difficult, but there the risk is also lower because there's fewer people going and they're absolutely beyond the range of anything swimming there. So for those islands, we can probably visit them less frequently, but in terms of prioritising, we would go about this looking at what's at risk. So particularly burrow nesting species like mac shearwaters, storm petrels, leeches petrels and puffins are very vulnerable to predation. So we'd look at sites where those species are present and try to protect them as a priority, and also sites where risks are higher, so where there's lots of visitors coming perhaps, or lots of boat traffic or construction operations or whatever. So that's it's quite a dynamic picture and keeps changing, but those are the top principles: protect the best assets and target the highest risk pathways.
Thank you, Laura. Another one around avian flu. So someone's been to Skomer Island off the coast of Pembrokeshire in Wales the last few years and was surprised that there were no foot dips to prevent AI to the puffins last year. Yeah, do you know who the contact would be about that?
So Skomer is managed by the South and West Wales Wildlife Trusts. They're very good with biosecurity and obviously do a great job at protecting that key site. That's the world's largest mac shearwater colony there on Skomer. So they would be the ones to contact about this, but I'm sure they're doing their utmost to keep the island safe.
That's great. Is eDNA used in any detection or survey methods on St Kilda for rats or any other inns?
Sorry, could you repeat that question? Sorry.
Yeah, so is eDNA used in any detection or survey methods on St Kilda for rats or any other invasive species?
No, at the moment we're still at the basic level of wax bait blocks, so we're just at that stage at the minute.
Yeah, that's great.
Could I add to that? So generally eDNA, its of greatest application at the moment is looking at aquatic species, so obviously things that live in water or spend time in water will leave their DNA behind there, and that's quite easy to sample and capture. through these methods, but it's much harder to collect that DNA from just sort of general environment like plants and soil and rocks. So there's ongoing work to develop these tools and techniques and make them more sensitive, but at the moment they're not at the stage where we could use them widely to detect rats anywhere.
Any other questions? Can you either put them in the chat box or you can put hand up and ask directly. Okay, I think that might be it. Well, I just want to say again, thank you so much for those talks. It was brilliant and it just sounds like a fantastic project.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy, and thanks again for joining. It was really great to hear about St Kilda and your biosecurity there. Brilliant work.
Thank you very much. It's very exciting to be part of this. Thank you.
We do actually have a couple more questions just come in. So do you have any experience of conflict between two protected species, e.g. predator and prey?
Do you want to answer that, Laura?
Well, I was thinking, would you want to say something on that? Do you have any experiences from St Kilda on this?
It's a difficult one. We haven't got any evidence yet about the St Kilda mice might be predating, but we haven't got definite evidence, so not sure really. Yeah, no, I was thinking more along the lines of birds predating other birds. We have some cases of this. The great skua, which of course suffered massively in the HPAI crisis last summer, but they are known to take birds, protected birds. Of course, the great skua is also protected, and it's a very important population we have here in the UK. So that's I think one example where there is for us it's quite a dilemma. Basically, we can't control the predator, but it can be causing an impact on another protected species. And similarly, many of our gull species are declining, and gulls can also be predators of particularly chicks. So those are tricky ones, but on balance, we'd probably say that's natural predator dynamics, and we wouldn't interfere unless something was going really badly wrong.
Great. And which invasive species do you believe are the biggest threats?
For seabirds, it's definitely rats, and mustelids are really big predators, but actually one of the biggest predators of seabirds on islands is cats. Not the pet cat, not the domestic cats you have at home, but feral cats, which are essentially wild animals. They roam an environment and they find seabirds and their eggs and chicks easy prey. So yeah, rats and cats worldwide are the biggest threats. But mice, increasingly, we've had some, you may have heard about Gough Island and Marion Island in the South Atlantic, where mice are actually eating live adult albatrosses. So mice can turn into a very voracious seabird predator, but these are quite unique situations, and it's not very widespread, but it does happen.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's everything now. So yeah, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for joining as well.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.